Welcome to the Manufacturing Masters Podcast with your host, Allison DeFord.
It's not 2019 anymore. Your prospective employees are not just looking for jobs with other manufacturers. You could be losing them to Amazon, Uber, Grubhub, for goodness sakes. There are so many new jobs available since the pandemic. And there's no better person I can think of to teach us some strategies and ways to keep your employees, your best talent, your top talent, from becoming someone else's than Lisa Ryan. She is the founder and professional speaker at Grategy, which I think is the most fantastic word. Gratitude and strategy together. My God, why didn't I think of this? She's also an expert on the Manufacturing Masters platform. Her videos are incredible. And I'm excited for you to learn from her today in our deep dive into how to keep that talent from going away, how to nurture it and invest in them. And one of my favorite phrases that she talks about is, instead of doing an exit interview, as in, hey, why are you leaving? Why don't you think about doing a stay interview? And she has a really great example about that. You're gonna love it. So everybody, let's dive into a courageous conversation with Lisa Ryan. Here we go. So, my gosh, today we have such a treat. I probably say that with every episode, but it's just so true. I'm so excited with Lisa, with what you bring to the table and your energy. And I know that everybody listening is going to get such value out of spending some time with you today. So thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm excited too.
Well, so the topic we're going to talk about today, and you're a full-time professional speaker and you are an expert on the Manufacturing Masters platform. So people can learn from you there. They can bring you into their company. There are a lot of different ways that you are helping manufacturers. And one of the main topics that you talk about that totally caught my interest is how to keep your top talent from becoming someone else's. And let's dive in and uncover, to help our listeners, walk away with some meaty, valuable nuggets of how they could start doing this today. And I have a feeling it starts from inside, correct? Inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the thing to keep in mind is that we are not going back to the good old days of 2019.
Right.
Literally everything has changed in this post-pandemic economy where people have a lot more choices. I mean, in manufacturing, it was hard enough to bring people in and hope that you didn't lose them to a competitor. But now you're not losing them to other manufacturers. You're losing them to Amazon and DoorDash and Uber and all of the other choices that they have out there. So what can we do to assess and reassess every single area of our workplace, including flexibility, because that's not a nice to have. It is an expectation with a lot of workers these days. And in manufacturing, you're just like, how am I supposed to add flexibility? There's so many ways that you can do that. It's just really thinking about and exploring some of the opportunities. But you're right. It does start from the inside. It starts from leadership. And you have that trickle-down effect that people, for example, they want access to you. If you just come to the plant and you go right to your office and you're like, I don't got time for these people, they have no connection to you. They have no loyalty to you. But if you walk through the plant and just say, hey, Joe, how you doing? How's your wife doing? How's the kids doing? Just that little bit of contact where you know something about the employee, you make the effort to connect with them, that starts to build loyalty. But the other thing too, and this is something we see with the newer generations that they want access to you, is you have a brand new employee. They've been with you for like 3 days, never been in the industry before, and they march right into your office and they sit down and they say, hey, I see some things that I think can help. And, I'd like to tell you about them. And you're sitting there doing everything possible so that your eyes do not roll back in your head. Listen to them because they see the world differently. And from them coming from outside the industry, they may have an idea. They're digital natives. So they may have some kind of access to technology or just a different way of thinking that can help you take your business to the next level.
Oh, so much right there. So access to you, the leader or leadership, upper management, whatever you want to call it. And you're right. Some newbie comes in, and they have some ideas and some suggestions. And it literally, I think us being seasoned, experienced people, our first inclination, like you said, my eyes are rolling back in my head and I'm thinking, really? You're going to tell me? And I think your advice is spot on.
Yeah.
Resist the eye roll and lean in and just listen.
Yeah.
Accept
Thank
it.
you for sharing. That's
Right.
all you need to say. Thank you for sharing. That's a great idea. We can do this part of it, or I'd love to be able to do that. Here's why we can't, but maybe we can look at it again in the future. It's this respectful communication.
Yes, I love that. And I think in the past, and you're so right, it's no longer, for years we would say it's not your grandfather's manufacturing business any longer, or hey, it's not 1950 anymore. What you said is so real. It's not even 2019 anymore.
Right.
This is a huge observation. We have sped up, is I guess the way I would describe it, and adapting at the speed of culture has never been more important than it is today. So access to you, listening, what else do they need to do?
Well, giving feedback and part of listening to your employees. And it's funny, when I do my programs, a lot of times I'll ask the audience, who does exit interviews? About a third of the room will raise their hand. And I always like to say, isn't that a little late? It's like, hey, why are you leaving? I mean, it's good to set some patterns, but I will tell you, if you're listening to this podcast, stop the car, take out a pen, and write down stay interviews. Why do your employees stay with you? And it can be as simple as 2 questions. Tell me 3 things you like about working here. What does that give you? That gives you the fodder you need to bring in new talent, because you're hearing from your employees what they like about working there. Now, the second question is not tell me 3 things you hate about working here, because that would not be profitable. But asking them, if you were in charge for the day, what would you change? What resources do you need? How can I be a better manager? How can I support you more? So a little bit of vulnerability. And again, your only response is thank you for sharing, poker face. Because if you fight, if you argue, if you justify, they will never trust you again. And it's finding out, because wouldn't you like to know now, if you ask your employee, well, what would cause you to leave? Well, I'm taking some computer classes at night, and if I got a job as a, CNC operator instead of just on the line here, I'd probably leave. It's like, hey, what can we find that we can educate that person to keep them here now? So these are the little things that we know that the employee wants. I had at one of my programs, one of the gentlemen said that he had tried to do stay interviews, but that's exactly how he messed it up, because every time they said something, he argued with them or he tried to justify, well, you don't understand. No, shut up. Listen, thank you for sharing. And then you act on some of those ideas, because now your employees actually know that you're paying attention and you care enough to act on the little things. And when you do these stay interviews, when you ask them, well, what resources do you need? You are terrified they are going to say, I want $50 an hour and I want to work 3 days a week. No, they want, and a lot of times it's just these little things that they want that's so easy to do. One of my favorites that I heard, and this is what you don't do. I had a client and they were allowed at this tool and die shop to wear shorts between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Okay. Well, sometimes it's hot before Memorial Day and sometimes it's hot after Labor Day. So the employees said, why can't we wear shorts whenever we want? In the departments where it was safe, obviously not in the welding department. And it would have been such a huge win. You know, my husband is one of those guys, if it's 40 degrees and sunny in December, that man is wearing shorts. You treat your employees like adults, but instead, this owner said, nope, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And he had this simple win. It wouldn't have cost him any time. It wouldn't have cost him any money. And it would have showed his employees that he was listening to them. So the little things do count. You don't have to do a lot, but you do have to do something.
Right. Okay, 2 things that I took away from that. The stay interview is fantastic. How many employers do you think, based on your experience, do stay interviews?
Well, the funny thing is, I think it's starting to come on, number one, because I'm talking about it and in my programs, and that seems to be one of the biggest takeaways. But a couple of years ago, I was speaking for the Fastener Institute, and there was a guy in the audience, Manny DeSantis. He's a CEO of 3 fastener plants. So he's a busy guy, right? CEO, has plants in Ohio and Indiana, and he decided to do stay interviews. So the first round, basically, they told him exactly what they thought he wanted to hear, because they're like, why is the CEO talking to me? Mm-hmm. But Manny acted on some of the things that they brought up. And so the second round, and he talked to every single employee at all 3 plants. Second round, they were a little bit more forthright. And by the third round, they were an open book, because they knew that Manny listened to them, cared about them, and acted on their suggestions. Well, when the Fastener Institute had me back a few years later after the pandemic, Manny was there and I asked him how things were going. And he said they did not lose a single person due to voluntary turnover during the pandemic. And he attributes that specifically to the stay interview, because he's built that type of relationship and that level of trust and loyalty with his employees that just keeps paying off.
Wow. Okay. So second big thing is that I took from that is act.
Yeah. Oh, you have to.
You've got to demonstrate.
Otherwise, employees, you have them fill out an engagement survey, and it takes that you bring in some high-priced consultant. They do a huge engagement project, and your employees don't hear anything for 9 months or a year later. They're like, well, that was a waste of breath. No. You act on things when you hear them. You're not going to be able to act on everything, but you can act on some things. I had another quick story. I was working with a golf course, and they had employees. They paid $5 for every idea. They didn't care what the idea was. If an employee came through with a suggestion, they gave them $5. And some of the suggestions were silly, like, oh, we should use the overripe bananas to make the banana splits in the snack bar, because if we cover them with enough ice cream and whipped cream, nobody will know they're overripe. They got $5 for it. But that golf course, it was tens of thousands of dollars in increased productivity and decreased cost because the employees know the job better than they knew the job. It's like
Right.
they see things in their day-to-day, and they didn't take themselves too seriously. It was $5. And then at the end of the year, they would have a contest for whoever gave the best idea. They won like $250 or something like that. So again, not enough money to make the other employees mad, like, oh, I should have got that. My idea was better. But enough money to make it interesting enough for people to participate and to celebrate with the winners.
Oh, okay. So the things that you're sharing don't cost much or any money. I
Nope.
think that's significant. Two, it's simply, I feel like a mindset shift on behalf of the owner, CEO, upper management, right? And a willingness to lean in and to listen. Like you said, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that feedback. But then the willingness to act and to actually demonstrate, I heard you, that was worth changing or adapting. And thank you.
No.
Including them. Do you feel like it's that an old mindset that we got into for so many years, kind of like parenting? It was like, you'll only speak when you're spoken to. It's all this like kind of old school thinking.
Well, the old days of do your job because you're getting paid on Fridays and I don't want to hear it. And you have to pay your dues. So you're going to start off by doing all the crap work that nobody else wants to do. And then you bide your time. None of that works anymore.
Yeah.
And it's catching your employees in the act of doing things well. Too many times in leadership, because, we want things to be perfect and we want things to be running smoothly. But the only time that we recognize our employees is when they're messing up.
Right.
Switch that and start catching them in the act of doing things well. And then that they're going to want more of that. And if you're out of practice, and believe me, a lot of people are, because it's almost like I give them permission to have these types of interactions because they do involve a little bit of vulnerability. I'm not perfect as the owner. I'm not all that a bag of chips. So the apology approach just looks like, you know what, guys, I have not been letting you know what an awesome job you're doing, and I'm going to do a better job at that. So now you're letting your employees know that this is something that you are working on yourself inside, that you're, showing them, hey, you know what? You guys are awesome. I just kind of assumed that that how I felt about you. Because otherwise, if from the end of this podcast, I got to start recognizing my people more. And you go back to the plant and you're like, hey, thanks so much. Great job. And that employee's going to be like, he has never thanked me before in my life. What does he want? Because you haven't built up trust. So this whole conversation is that interaction, every interaction, one moment at a time, one thank you at a time, one comment at a time. By the same token, one eye roll at a time can destroy that relationship and any trust that you may have built.
Yes. Yeah, it's like lots of deposits into accounts, each of these people maybe kind of representing an account, and that one withdrawal can just really, really destroy what you've built up. I think, God, there's just so many ways we could go with this. I want to let you keep talking because we're getting towards the end, but I know there's a couple more things we should cover. Yeah. What other advice do you find manufacturers find from you is the most helpful? Like, is there like a aha moment that you see when you're running your programs and speaking? Right. Is there a common theme?
Well, the stay interviews are always there, recognizing your employees, but the one that we didn't cover, which is huge, is investing in your employees. Help your employees to be better tomorrow than they are today. And some people will say, if I spend all that money on training, those people are just going to take that training and move anyway. It's like, but what if you don't invest in them and they stay? It's these little things. I was talking to a group, and I had one woman in the audience raise her hand because I asked them, well, how do you invest in your people? And she said, we give every employee $1,500 a year to invest in whatever personal or professional development they want. So here you go. Here's $1,500. You can do anything from a welding certification to underwater basket weaving instruction and everything in between. And so I asked her, well, what percentage of your people take advantage of that? And I always have a fun quiz with my audience. I'm like, okay, so what do you think? What percentage of people took advantage? And you have all the optimistic people going, 50%, 75%, 90%. And then there's always the cynical person, 5%. The cynical person wins, because almost without exception, when I ask that question, and people know, it's 3 to 5%. So you're offering this benefit to people, and you have this small amount of people that are going to take you up on it. And you know what? Those are your future leaders. Somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I got this flyer in the mail for new supervisor training. I'd love to take that. Pay for it. Let them go. Because when you take your best hourly employee and you promote them to supervisor, you have just promoted your worst supervisor without training. And those people are afraid to come to you because they're like, well, if I ask him this question, he's going to think I'm an idiot. And why did he promote me? So you send them to training when they're in a room full of a whole bunch of other new supervisors, and they can have that conversation in a safe space and learn what they can do together. So investing in your people, it's not going to cost you a lot of money, but when your employees know that you care enough about them to invest again in their professional development, how they can keep you better in the plant, but their personal development as well. Does it matter if it's extremely, specifically job related? No, because you're helping your employees to be better tomorrow than they are today. And when you make that level of investment in them, you're going to keep them longer. They're going to be more productive. They're going to have fewer safety accidents. They're going to be more engaged. And you're not going to spend all of your precious time and money bringing in new people to replace the ones you lost.
Mic drop right there. Well, I think one of my favorite things you said today was regarding the exit interview. Hey, why did you leave? That's fantastic. Yeah, so let's avoid that. Everybody listening, nobody wants that. You want to keep the good people that you have. And I just really appreciate everything that you shared with us today, Lisa. You are a fountain, a deep well of information. And if you are not already connected with Lisa on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do that. You will not be sorry. I learned something every time I talk to you, and just really grateful that you were able to spend some time with us today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the next time. So we will start planning that. Anyway, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And
if you're not already, subscribe to the Manufacturing Masters podcast on Apple Music or Spotify. And for a deeper dive, head on over to manufacturing-masters.com. It's everything they never taught you in school.